but there's things that you can do to prevent. So I had a brief conversation with the chief this morning about a curfew. So we will be meeting about that later on today. And that's the type of aggressive tactic I was referring to. The new information this minute. Go ahead. Well, that doesn't.
Okay, so we've been listening to Mayor Karen Bass. This was from earlier today. We're going to step out of this. We're going to continue to keep up some of these live looks. This is what we call them as for about 10 minutes until the top of the hour, though. So in the meantime, though, we do want to bring in a familiar face to the program. Of course, that's national security analyst and expert and retired Marine Intelligence Officer Hal Kemper. He joins me. Hal, good to see you. It's been some time. We got a lot to get to. I want to keep these live images, though, up on the screen. And you've been watching this all throughout the course of the day. Hal, this is day 5. And so I think many are wondering and asking themselves, because there has been a criticism from some of these Republicans especially that local and state law enforcement, they can't handle this alone. And that is why they are saying and justifying and defending President Trump's decision to federalize the National Guard. From what you have seen over the last 5 days, is that turning out to be correct, that they cannot handle this alone?
Well, Andrew, the language that we're hearing actually ties to the language in the Insurrection Act. And so you're hearing from, certainly from the White House, and you're hearing from some key Republicans, language about the inability of the local, state and local law enforcement to control the situation. That is a predicate for invoking the Insurrection Act. And of course, what you're hearing from Mayor Bass and Governor Newsom is language saying, no, we have the situation well in hand. We got plenty of forces. We don't need the military here. Now, with that, the federalizing piece is kind of a different topic. If you want the National Guard to come in and do law enforcement right away, then they would stay under state status, and Gavin Newsom would have brought in the National Guard. He had no intent to do so. This was the president federalizing the National Guard, which, just to clarify, the president can federalize the National Guard. He doesn't have to have the governor's permission. They're not the governor's personal, military force. Actually, the president and the federal government has first right of refusal, if you will, on the National Guard. They are a reserve component of the military service to which they align to. So, yes, the president can do that. And what he's brought them in to do at this point is it's not to support civil authorities in general. It's not acting at a request from the governor to the federal government saying, hey, we need support. He's doing what's called federal to federal, which is federal military coming in to provide support for federal agency or federal agencies. In this case, the support is they're providing security at property federal installations. It's a very different mission, and I've heard a lot of convoluted back and forth on this, and the president can do that, but there is a clock ticking. There's the U.S. Economy Act, which looks at the cost of this and says at some point you have to look at alternative sources that could be more economical. So that's kind of ticking in the background.
So, Hal, if you could clarify for us, and correct me if I'm wrong, about the powers that the National Guard and, yes, the Marines will eventually have. From what I understand, they cannot arrest and detain anyone. And if they do, Pandora's box is open. Do I have that right?
Well, what it is in their current status as Title 10, which is they're federalized, so they're under Title 10 status. They are prohibited by law. It's called the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 from engaging in law enforcement activity. So they can't arrest anybody. Doesn't mean they couldn't they couldn't provide security at an installation. They actually do that all the time at federal military installations all over the place. So they can do that, but they can't go out there and do like police functions like you see LAPD or LA County Sheriff's doing. They are prohibited unless the president invokes the Insurrection Act. And if he invokes the Insurrection Act, that shifts, because that is saying that the state or local authorities have lost control of the situation, and the only way to regain control is to use the military, and that is that exception. And that's where you kind of hear a lot of the political language right now. Is kind of setting it up one way or the other.
So this is what the president said today in the Oval Office when asked whether or not he would invoke the Insurrection Act. He said, quote, "If there's an insurrection, I would certainly invoke it. We'll see." He says, "But I can tell you last night was terrible, and the night before that was terrible." So it seems like he's leaving the door open, or at least not ruling it out.
Oh, he's not ruling it out. He's very much left that door open. In fact, some would probably say he opened that door by what's been happening here. But no, I've been listening consistently. He has definitely had rhetoric or language that aligns with a decision, should he decide to do it, to invoke the Insurrection Act.
Oh.
And if he does, no doubt there will be legal review on that to find out, was it justified.
Okay, so Hal, I just want to juxtapose this shot that we have right now from the very same shot we had last night. This is outside the Roybal Federal Building in downtown LA, and last night at this very time, there was a huge throng of protesters right up to those law enforcement agents with shields, and it was very tense, and it really did turn into many clashes, so much so that a dispersal order was given, unlawful assembly was instituted, and they got them out of there eventually. But today, Hal, look at that. Traffic is going right in front of the building. That's the federal building right there. You don't see a protester in sight. What do you make of that? Is that progress? Because I want to ask you this. The fact that the Marines have not been called in, they have been activated, they have been deployed. They're not in Los Angeles, as far as we know. It's been reported they have not yet left their stationing area. Does that undercut the necessity of bringing them in the first place, Hal?
Well, I think the Marines are coming in. I did see pictures of Marines in buses leaving 29 Palms.
But Hal, my point is they're not in downtown Los Angeles.
They're not in downtown Los Angeles yet. We have not seen them yet. And, the total force, once it's arrayed, will be almost half the size of LAPD. So it's a pretty big force. But I don't know that the White House really is concerned about the Roybal building situation. I think they have something else in mind, and they want to bring in all these forces. And I would say that if you're looking at securing all the federal property, all the federal offices, all the federal stuff, it would take a very large force to really secure that. So that's probably some of the math that's involved. But my sense is, I don't see them turning off the Marines. But Marines could be going to another location. I can think of a place where they might stage before they go into Los Angeles to those federal properties involved.
So, Hal, last question for you. We're almost at the top of the hour. You and I discuss so often these conflicts around the world, in Russia, in Ukraine, in the Middle East. I was seeing online, I want you to maybe corroborate this if you can, because I was kind of stunned by the statistic. So, the president has ordered the deployment of roughly 4,000 National Guard members and 700 Marines to Los Angeles. I was seeing online from some who follow the Middle East extremely closely that is more troops than we have in Iraq and Syria combined right now. Is that accurate? Is that true?
That is probably correct, and there are some reasons for that. First off, it is a fairly sizable force that's going into Los Angeles. The other thing, too, is we've just done a big drawdown of our forces in Syria. As you know, we've kind of sort of normalized relations, if you will, with Syria, so that force presence has been drawn down by over 50%, or at least 50%, is my understanding. And Iraq, we've been drawing down that force presence for quite some time. It's significant, but it's not huge, and I think most of it's concentrated up at Al-Assad Air Base. So, when you look back historically, you go, "Oh my gosh, how can that be?" But if you look at the current situation, it's a smaller force in both countries.
Okay, yeah, and maybe it's apples to oranges here, but I saw that kind of floating out there on social media. I kind of stopped me in my tracks, and I had to ask you about it. I knew you were coming on here. Hal Kempfer, we don't have much time. Final thoughts in about 5 seconds. Go.
Final thoughts are: I'm watching to see if the protests, certainly the violence, quells down. And obviously, everyone's going to be watching. Will the president invoke the Insurrection Act? And then there will be a huge legal challenge to say, did he have a reason to invoke the Insurrection Act? And that will no doubt go to the Supreme Court if it does happen. But this is all speculative. So that's my final thought.
All right, Hal Kempfer, thank you so much. Out to Fox 11 in Los Angeles.
Is back open.
A lot of law enforcement presence right there. Take a look at the view from the ground. Happened on the freeway. The video there on the right, live pictures on the upper left. You can see CHP mobilized quickly to move those protesters off the freeway. Not a repeat of what we saw this weekend. The confrontation shut down traffic for about 10 minutes. At the moment, traffic is flowing.
Good evening. Welcome to Fox 11 News at 5, simulcast on Fox 11 and Fox 11 Plus. I'm Alex Michelson.
And I'm Christine Devine. Here is where things stand at this hour in Los Angeles. A Marine battalion is here in Los Angeles. It's not yet engaged near protests. The 700 Marines were sent from 29 Palms to aid some 1,700 National Guard already on the ground, but 4,000 are being deployed statewide. Governor Newsom filed an emergency request in federal court to block the Trump administration and use of the National Guard and Marines, but a federal judge has denied that.
At least for now, they may get a hearing on that later. Meanwhile, the Pentagon is revealing the cost of all this. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the deployment of Marines and the Guard will cost at least $134 million.
Oh, wow.
LA Mayor Karen Bass has called for ICE raids to end. That's not the plan, according to Hegseth, who says immigration enforcement could last for 60 days, and things could escalate further. President Trump suggesting he's open to invoking the Insurrection Act. Today, he used some heated rhetoric in his speech at Fort Bragg, calling LA protesters animals and a foreign enemy.
On Monday night, protests did turn violent. We saw more vandalism, violence, and there were 96 arrests, according to the LAPD.
So protests against federal immigration enforcement heating up again. We're going to begin our coverage of it right now.
Fox 11's Matthew Seedorf joining us live from the downtown LA area again with the latest. Matthew?
Yeah, we're right now on the police line where protesters have been out here all day long. We're at Alameda and Temple Street. You can see there are some protesters kind of taking a break right now over there in the shade, but the majority of the ones that were here actually went that direction at least a few blocks. They've been kind of bouncing around where we are right now. But Sammy, if you want to just flip and show the massive line of LAPD cars out here, we're seeing so many police officers. There's just a giant change of what we've been seeing the last few days. Police departments from all over the area out here as far as the Devonshire Division for LAPD. And if we flip it this way, this is where we're outside the federal detention center. We saw at least 30 people get arrested. They got a little bit too close, and there was a little bit of a face-off earlier today with members of law enforcement. You can see that LAPD bus. Again, at least 30 people arrested there. And then as tensions were building here, more and more people left this scene and went over to the 101 freeway, blocking portions of that freeway. There's currently a standoff in place between protesters at that scene and members of law enforcement. But at this point, it seems like people are just kind of bouncing around. These protesters haven't really figured out exactly where they're going to go. It seems like there's also just this overwhelming force of police and members of law enforcement out here. Definitely right now, it seems like members of law enforcement are outnumbering the number of protesters that we're seeing in downtown. I'll go ahead and send it back to you.
So, Matthew, it also is striking the body language is different today as well.
Yeah, completely different, much calmer, right? I mean, there's not really that sense of energy that we were feeling at this time yesterday where you could feel like something was going to happen. I mean, if we can just pan and look at the majority of the protesters on the block that we're seeing, they're kind of just standing there, looking around, hanging out in the shade. There's some signs and stuff, but for the most part right now, it's fairly quiet, at least where we are here at Alameda and Temple.
So, Matthew, also, we know there are fewer protesters out there today. The scene that you were showing with that police bus and hearing about the almost 100 arrests by the LAPD, people who are wondering what's happening to some of these people that are especially committing the violence. What do you make of hearing of about 100 arrests?
Yeah, we actually have an update on that. According to sources, we're hearing that at least 130 arrests so far today, and that's almost as many as we've seen the previous 3 days combined. So law enforcement out here definitely making their presence known, and just a major shift from what we've seen the previous days.
And some arrested today as part of their peaceful protest. There's a long history of that. People that are being taken into custody as a statement, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's always the people that are choosing to be arrested to make that statement for political reasons. We're not exactly sure, I'm sure that there were portions of people in this crowd that were taken away in the bus that were arrested, you could say, by choice. But there were definitely some that it was not their choice. They had a little bit of a face-off with police that might have gone a little bit too far.
Well, as we are looking at your live shot there, I couldn't help but notice all of the graffiti behind you. And I'm thinking as people around the nation watch Los Angeles as they have been for 5 days now, you can't help but take notice of the destruction and the damage there, just the graffiti alone.
Yeah, sorry about showing that graffiti, but there is just, it's hard not to because there's so much of it. It's everywhere. We won't pan and show it, obviously, but it's pretty much all the blocks. You see the F word and you see ICE, a lot of derogatory language. You see vandalism, benches that are torn up, concrete sidewalks that are torn up. Yeah, it's tough to see.
Are you seeing more cops out there than protesters?
Oh yeah, definitely. So far today, I mean, look at this massive line. This is all LAPD right here. And then if you, it's even on the next street over, and we've been seeing them kind of driving all over the blocks. You'll see them with their sirens on, as well as California Highway Patrol with them. Just a massive show of force today. Definitely, it seems like the protesters are on the move, and the police departments out here are not letting them really gather in one spot too long.
And just noting, as we see all those officers there, so many of them in those long sleeve uniforms, just noting it's a bit warm out there this afternoon.
Yeah, it's a little bit warm, and a lot of these police officers are putting in just massive amounts of hours. All these officers working overtime. You're talking about 12-hour days, but also some of them working much longer than that, as much as, 20-hour days. So they're feeling it. It's been a long few days for them. It's been a long few days for the protesters as well, and maybe that's why so far tonight it's a little quieter.
That's all expensive, too, if you think about it. We know this cost for the military, apparently $134 million. We know LA's in a big budget deficit. Sometimes when we see these, and we've covered these for so many years, there's a moment when the quote-unquote fever breaks, when, things start to go in the other direction. It seems like we may have hit that moment. Last night may have been the end of it. But the real test, Matthew, is what happens after dark when the Antifa folks and all those folks come out. Last night, they were allowed to basically do whatever they wanted, and then at the end of the night, some of them were arrested. Still got to see what happens on that front tonight.
Yeah, that's a good point. And don't forget, too, I mean, there were people that were trying to take over the 101 freeway about an hour ago. So there are still people trying to make their presence known in the downtown area tonight for this protest. But it definitely seems like law enforcement is on top of it, and they have the numbers right now to put an end to it pretty quick.
Well, you heard LAPD Chief Jim McDonald talk about how they really can gauge how protests ramp up when there's an incident or situation. And he said it takes 2 or 3 days, and that would have put it at Sunday for those 2 or 3 days. Of course, it being a weekend allows many more people to make their voices known, get out there, protest, and also people, as you say, the disruptors and those instigators and things like that. But really, this show of LAPD force in this pretty much same area where people have been showing up, which is near the federal building and that 101 freeway, quite the statement if you're planning to show up as a protester or to do some damage. Quite a statement, right, Matthew, by police?
Yeah, I mean, if you come down here right now, you're going to be met with a large, overwhelming police presence, and it's going to be tough if you're trying to cause issues to do that tonight, because even just walking around the town right now, you'll just see police driving by, lights and sirens on. Even driving by just this intersection where we're standing by these protesters, we've been seeing them whip around here with the big buses as well. I mean, it just seems like they want to make their presence known to deter any more issues this evening.
Yeah, Matthew Cedar,
there's this.
Thank you for that reporting. And we look at these folks now marching in the streets as their protest continues. That though, is part of a protest for a lot of people. I mean, as long as that is just sort of peaceful marching through the streets, obviously that messes up traffic, but that's not nearly as destructive as some of the behavior that we've seen in the last few days. So we're going to keep an eye on that, and also want to see what's happening in Orange County as well, where local leaders are condemning what they are calling authoritarian fear tactics brought on by ICE and Homeland Security officers. This was what it looked like earlier today. This is in Santa Ana after some violent clashes last night between protesters and some of the law enforcement out there.
We had that live on our nighttime newscast. Fox 11's Christina Gonzalez has been out there all day taking the temperature as tempers did flare up last night, Christina.
Yeah, right now we're at McFadden and Bristol, and let me get out of the way because the people who are beginning to gather here, and they're just arriving, they're coming in from the Civic Center, from downtown, where you have the National Guard tanks and the setup there. So they were having rallies there, and people were trying to continue business in that area. All that in the middle of this, we had a bunch of protesters from the other side show up as we were talking to a woman from a pawn shop, and let's just listen to what it's like to have to deal with this as it's all going on and try to do business. Listen. Did you ever imagine, algún día se imaginó que iba a tener al National Guard enfrente?
Never. This is the first.
People are waking up!
Came to get some lunch and we just couldn't, no.
We're going to establish law and order.
Is it changing how you do things to see all the images of, like you were trying to come here for lunch, but...
Right. Yeah, it does.
In what way?
It does only because I feel like it's, you can't go to your local places.
We have employees that, need to feed their families. We have a lot of people that come here to get paid to feed their families. And, if we're to close, if we are 1, 2, or 3 days, it's a huge impact for the employees that we have here. So.
Aside from the protest going on in front of you, are you also finding employees afraid to come to work because of the raid?
You know what? It's intense. It's not just here in Perla, but just in downtown in general. Whether you are legal or not legal, I think even the people who are legal are afraid to come out. I don't think it's a matter of a document. It's just, you see police, you see, the Marines out here, you see police, and you just don't want to be outside.
It's so frustrating and it's so unbelievable that I don't even have the words for it. It's just so...
Still trying to process this.
Honestly, yeah, because I know from here, this is just the beginning. I know things are gonna happen from here. This is only the beginning.
And I want to emphasize, at this point, the only businesses really being affected by this whole thing after the stuff last night are the ones downtown. All of Santa Ana continues operating just fine. But talking about the issue and how angry they are about it, our Orange County politician, 2nd District Supervisor...
Meet Sam. Every day starts with his morning routine. Like many of us.
This to say just a little while ago, listen.
To the federal administration, we demand that you take your militarized equipment and troops and stop occupying our communities immediately. Yesterday, I personally witnessed the efforts of ICE officers clearly intending to escalate what was a lawful and peaceful demonstration.
And back live here, you can see all the vehicles beginning to arrive and the crowd beginning to grow. A very peaceful crowd at this point, I do have to say. This is not the first time they've had rallies out here at Bristol and McFadden, and they can get quite large. But at this point, they have been very, very peaceful. Even the stuff going on downtown was loud, in your face, but it never came to blows or anything like that. And if I could wear a Dodgers hat in this territory, and I'm not getting it, it's not so bad. But of course, we're going to have to see what happens later on. But generally, the situation here, people have been very peaceful, and we'll
keep our eye on it. They're just making their voices heard. I'm Christina Gonzalez, live in Santa Ana. Back to you guys in the studio. Noting Santa Ana being in Orange County and maybe not Dodger territory, or maybe. But anyway, Christina, we were on the news last night with the protesters pretty late into the night there in Santa Ana. We also talked about there being an ICE raid or two in Santa Ana and surrounding Orange County areas. What are you hearing about that, ICE operations there? Yeah, I mean, the people that we talked to are telling us that they've had several raids out here, and that is what's bringing out people to the streets. And they've been going on for a while, and they're expecting more. And the reality is that as you see, let me get out of the way again so you can see some of these people. One of the things we are hearing from people, and not only here, but in LA everywhere, is that they were told by their politicians that this is a sanctuary city, a sanctuary state, and that they would be safe. And the reality is that they're seeing people being picked up by federal authorities. So as much as local authorities are trying to do what they can, the reality is that they can't, at least not the local authorities, stop those raids because they're federal. So people are saying, well, can anything stop it? And it's a question we're asking the politicians. What can they do? And the reality is that this is going to be a tough situation because the feds are saying they're going to continue these raids for a while. So it's difficult. It's difficult for them, but as far as we understand, they are continuing, yes.
I mean, federal law supersedes state law, and the federal government has the right to do it, even though it's being challenged in court right now. We'll see what happens on that front. Can you talk, though, for a moment, for people that may not spend a lot of time in Santa Ana, about sort of the makeup of Santa Ana? Such a proud Latino community, such an immigrant community.
Yeah, Santa Ana is a huge community, not only for Latinos. I may add, we're in Orange County. There's a huge Asian population out here. We actually had quite a few people asking us, have you heard anything? You know, because there's a lot of people afraid other than Mexican Americans or Latin Americans. But the population here is highly from all kinds of other countries. Santa Ana has always, if you go to the shopping district, you're going to have quinceañera stores, which is where you get your 15 dresses, and one after the other and the new stores like the Starbucks coming in. And it's been an old community, old-time Latino community. So, yeah, this is in Orange County. If there's going to be a flashpoint like LA would be in LA County, it probably would be Santa Ana because of the makeup of the community. And hopefully it will not get to the point. I will say, when I went to downtown this morning, I did not see the kind of damage we saw in LA. People, yes, they spray painted some walls, and yes, they did trash the windows of the federal building, but nobody broke into any stores. That's why the businesses, but we do have fireworks, that's what those are, and they happen quite often. We're getting kind of used to them. But at this point, the businesses were not targeted like they were in Los Angeles, and hopefully that will remain the case here. That's what the protesters are hoping themselves for. Well, we also did see the Santa Ana Police Department out there in force. We saw several people being detained on our air as well. And also we had the Sheriff's Department of Orange County that was there also. So I know we've been covering a lot of Los Angeles in our coverage in the past 4 or 5 days. But when we got to Orange County there, we got to see Orange County there kind of, you might say, in action and what was happening there. But there was a heavy police presence. Do you know about that, Christina? Well, like the woman was saying, the owner of the pawn shop, I don't think this is going to get better before it gets worse. At least that's her perspective and many of the people here. If the raids don't stop, is what I am being told by people out here, these things are not going to stop. So we'll have to see what happens because as LA does, other cities may follow in terms of how the protests grow. We'll have to see. In the meantime, we might also want to get you an Angels hat. Go along with the Dodgers.
Exactly. We got to get reference.
I had it in the car. I've been digging it out because I also love the Angels. I just have to put something on right now, but hopefully by the next hit I'll find the Angels hat.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do it all. All right, Christina, thank you. By the way, we're expecting a news conference from Mayor Bass that was supposed to start at 5:15. It could start at any moment. When it does, we will go there. That's from the Emergency Operations Center for the city.
So as we talk talked earlier in this newscast, a federal judge has denied an emergency order filed by Governor Newsom to block the deployment of the National Guard and Marines in Los Angeles.
But it's not totally over. Newsom, of course, is calling the deployment illegal. He says President Trump is turning the military against its own citizens. So the judge has scheduled a Thursday afternoon hearing on California's request for a restraining order. President Trump spoke about the immigration protests today at Fort Bragg, telling the crowd he will liberate L.A. from, quote, foreign enemies.
What you're witnessing in California is a full-blown assault on peace, on public order, and on national sovereignty carried out by rioters bearing foreign flags with the aim of continuing. You know what? They have it in Europe, too. It's happening.
The president also called L.A. a, quote, trash heap. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, also weighing in on Governor Newsom's actions.
Gavin Newsom should be arrested, but he ought to be tarred and feathered. I'll say that. I mean, look, he's standing in the way of the administration and the carrying out of federal law, right? He is applauding the bad guys and standing in the way of the good guys. He is trying to. He's a participant, an accomplice in our federal law enforcement agents being not just disrespected but assaulted. This is a serious problem.
Newsom the other day told me that Johnson is a joke and not taken seriously. Johnson says Newsom should do his job and stop defying the president. We are on top of more breaking news. A lot going on. Look at this. A brush fire burning in the hills. This is above Burbank. It caused some evacuation orders. Skyfox over the scene. This is near Bethany Road and Amherst Drive. This is west of the DeBell Golf Course. Up to 10 acres burned so far. Authorities have also closed the nearby hiking areas as well.
So let's talk about the weather and what kind of role that's playing with that fire as well. Chief Meteorologist Admiral.
All right, we're going to step out of Fox 11 there in Los Angeles as they go on to some of their forecasts. You saw there that very small brush fire going on, the Bethany fire in Burbank. So in the meantime, though, the key focus of our coverage will continue to be here on Live Now. All of these protests and demonstrations against ICE still playing out, not only in Los Angeles. Take a look at this. This is in Washington Square Park in New York City. Quite a sizable crowd there, this anti-ICE demonstration. And you can see many coming out on a summer night in New York City. It's about almost 8:30 there in the Big Apple. And you can see this is a pretty sizable crowd, somewhat jovial, not as tense like what we've seen in Los Angeles. You can see people kind of waving their flags and their signs up and down. You see some of those signs have the word ICE on them. And look at that sign there, stop the deportations now. So wanted to let you just make sure you're aware, we're not only following the protests going on in Los Angeles, but also like there in New York, also in Chicago, also in Dallas and Austin and so many other places, several other places around the country here. So this is a good time to take a quick commercial break. Remember, we are anticipating this hour yet another live press conference from Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass. So TBD on that. We'll see you after the break.
As actions of intimidation.
And sadly, students have lost parents to ICE.
Last night had to watch in horror.
Back in 2023 as well, he lost. Governor Phil Murphy, the Democrat. I only say that because it remains to be seen if this is not
AA2.
As they go on to some of their forecasts, you saw there that very small brush fire going on, the Bethany fire in Burbank. So in the meantime, though, the key focus of our coverage will continue to be here on Live Now. All of these protests and demonstrations against ICE still playing out, not only in Los Angeles. Take a look at this. This is in Washington Square Park in New York City. Quite a sizable crowd there, this anti-ICE demonstration. It remains to be seen. Back out. Let's stay on this because I don't want to miss it. She could walk out at any moment. This will be her second update.
This, as his dad was picked up at a car wash in Westchester, a family outing on a Sunday, and an elementary school student on the west side of LA.
That was Nick Melvoin from the Board of Education. The district also announced that there are resources available to students, parents, and school workers for LAUSD employees. Support is available 24/7 at this number that you see on your screen, 800-882-1341. And then for the LAUSD families, this hotline number can help you if you worry about arrest and deportation. Perhaps you need a family plan. That number is 213-443-1300.
I mean, it's a really big portion of the LAUSD community is
Correct.
undocumented. So, imminent danger, that's quite a strong phrase that he's using there. I mean, but he said there's been no evidence of this actually happening.
Correct. And he was mentioning the two vans near a particular school. It's not like it's widespread. It's not like every LAUSD school they see a federal van nearby. But what he's saying is it's a real threat. And he sees it more as intimidation and a way to stoke fear.
Yeah,
Especially
it was
if you're not going to go in.
Mayor Bass yesterday was talking about
Hello
that-
to everyone
that
that's
school.
coming
It was
in.
Her grandson's
Yeah.
school, so she heard about it firsthand.
So as we continue to talk with you, we watch these protesters here on the move in downtown LA. We kind of got a reality check when we heard from the superintendent about what some families are truly dealing with. And what stood out to me is when he said, if you think you may be deported, you might want to make plans for your children. May have been born here, may not have been born here, but you may want to make plans for someone to care for your children.
Well, that has been the advice as soon as President Trump was inaugurated, because he made his plan so clear early on that the immigration attorneys and whatnot had been giving all this advice about what you can do in order to protect yourself, meaning, don't let someone into your house or your car without a judicial warrant, but at the same time, make the plans, make sure that things are in place in case you are arrested and detained by ICE.
And people view this differently, and there's some people that will view that and say, you should have thought of that when you came to the country legally, and you put yourself at risk by doing this, and you knew what the rules were, and you broke those rules, and so that's the consequence of that. And of course, there's plenty of people that are outraged at the possibility of it as well.
And
we understand we have viewers that see it both ways.
And let me point out that a lot of what these protesters are saying is they worry about family separation. And we did hear from Border Czar Homan, who said basically, then, make the choices, take your kids with you.
Yeah, go.
But if you're illegal...
You don't have to be separated. You can take them to your country.
Right. That's what he said, and that's the attitude from the Trump administration. People here that are supporting the undocumented say, you know what, they're just here trying to make a better life for their children and their family.
All right, Susan,
Look at that
thank
sign,
you.
peaceful protester.
As we watch this downtown, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Fox 11 Traffic is sponsored by Morgan & Morgan.
Okay, so we are getting out of Fox 11 there in Los Angeles as they go to a quick commercial break. I'm Andrew Kraft. We're a little past the bottom of the hour. You're watching all of this, of course, on Live Now from Fox. Remember, we are, though, waiting right now for Mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, and other LA officials. Not entirely sure if she'll be joined by the LAPD chief. That remains to be seen. You see the sign language interpreter on hand for this. So not entirely sure when this is going to begin. In lieu of going to a quick commercial break, let's stay on this because I don't want to miss it. She could walk out at any moment. This will be her second update for the day. So in the meantime, all right, about 8 minutes ago, she did post this on her X account. Let's put this up. She said this: I'm closely monitoring the situation in downtown Los Angeles and preparing to take new action to protect our communities. Stay alert and be ready to follow any safety measures that may be announced soon. So could this be some type of preview for some type of announcement? She says, and I don't want to read too much into it, she's preparing to take new action to protect our communities. Not entirely sure what that means. Speaking of the downtown Los Angeles community, let's take it. This is a live picture right now. So yet another kind of different hallmark to this group, to this protest. They're on the move. You see it there. They're marching through the streets of downtown. That was different from last night. Last night, they were fixated and focused, stationed right outside the federal building, and they were there at that intersection for hours. This group, of which I would imagine many similar protesters throughout the duration of these 5 nights. So in the meantime, you got to get a permit in most big cities to do something like this. Not entirely sure if they have one. This looks somewhat ad hoc. As you can see, they have moved from point A to point B, and that's what they're doing. So I only say that because it remains to be seen if this is not, a sanctioned assembly, it will be deemed an unlawful assembly at some point by law enforcement. And so you know what happens when a gathering in a group is deemed an unlawful assembly. It is broken up and people are detained. So not entirely sure if that's what we're going to see, but this is yet another vantage point in the air as we continue to cover this story. In the meantime, LAPD Central Division saying this: traffic advisory, several different marches in the downtown area. Please avoid the downtown Los Angeles area, and arrests are being made at Alameda south of Aliso. Okay, so that is a new tweet, I believe, from just minutes ago. Let's go back in the air, take a look at this. As Fox 11 in Los Angeles, they're back in coverage. Let's keep listening.
Voice being heard. They've been stopping at different points to get their message out, but we have not seen any major destruction in downtown.
And obviously a much smaller group than we've seen on other days there in the downtown LA area. Again, it is a Tuesday. It is day 5. So perhaps there might be some of the steam let out of this just a little bit, as we know the issue is not over when it comes to ICE and their operations here in the Los Angeles area in Orange County. But for those who are wanting to come out and give up their day, maybe obviously not seeing as many people on that front as well. Also, we do know LAPD has a huge presence in downtown LA. CHP, a pretty big presence too, when protesters did get onto the freeway for about a mere 10 minutes, and they were pushed right back off that 101 freeway. But noting the traffic there, the cars there, an area probably to avoid unless you need to be in the downtown area as we continue to watch protests throughout the days. If you don't have business there, might be an area just to stay away from right now.
So they're near downtown Grand Park right now, and we know that there is supposed to be an event in Grand Park tonight around 6 o'clock, an interfaith prayer service to talk about these issues, hopefully in a peaceful way. So some of these folks may be starting to gather for that as they move in downtown LA, and we expect Mayor Bass at some point to attend that service, which is across the street from LA City Hall. But first, we expect her to give a briefing. This is a live picture from LA's Emergency Operations Center, where we expect to hear from the mayor. So far, it was just, I'm just being told it was postponed another 10 minutes. So it was supposed to happen at 5:15, then it was supposed to happen at 5:38, and now it's going to be, I guess, 10 more minutes before we hear from the mayor of Los Angeles as we see these people continue to move.
This would be perhaps the definition of a peaceful protest for the most part. Obviously, blocking streets and traffic is not what people who are trying to get to and from would want, but we are continuing to watch this. And we have our reporter, Matthew Seedorf, who's there on the ground. Let's go to him now. Matthew?
Yeah, the protesters, as you guys have been mentioning, are on the move, and so are police trying to maneuver around and keep up with them. You can see police heading that way right now. Look at that. They're gathering in large numbers to go around to the other side of the federal building where we are, and we might be heading that way too. It's hard to keep track because there's been multiple groups of protesters kind of meandering through downtown this evening, but again, so far, no major issues. There's a much bigger police presence than what we've seen in previous days, and we've seen at least 130 arrests so far, according to sources, but it's possible that it's more than that. We did speak with one protester who actually got shot by one of those rubber bullets and is back out here today. Here's what he has to say.
Looting is stupid. Feel that the destruction is unnecessary. I mean, LA sure has got graffiti, but somebody's got to clean this up, and that's got to come out of tax dollars, right? So when the tax percentage raises next year or whatever, you can't get mad. You know, I'm of Afro-Latino descent. I'm a proud Afro-Panamanian. I'll stand up and beat my chest to that all day. And I'll verbally assault you and make you feel bad about your choices before I go ahead and vandalize what you're doing. But I feel a lot of this is just unnecessary.
So you can see police also staging over there off of Los Angeles, kind of closer to the federal building, the opposite side of where we are. Where we are right now is kind of where protesters were spending the majority of their day, where we saw at least 30 arrests, 30 protesters put into a bus, but protesters here, where we're standing right now too, as a couple of police are kind of on standby, just making sure nothing pops off where we are right now. But it seems like most of the police are going to go focus on the other end of the federal building as these protesters are on the move. I'll go ahead and send it back to you.
All right, interesting shot there. So as we have the word of the interfaith service at Grand Park tonight at 6 p.m., Matthew, that could bring more of a crowd to the downtown area. 6 o'clock is really close to when it gets darker out, say 8 o'clock, give or take. So I'm guessing police, knowing that there is going to be some kind of rally or gathering there tonight, are pre-positioning.
Yeah, you can imagine. So, I mean, they are definitely making their presence known today. They're all over the place. You see them driving around, lights and sirens on. We've also seen more protesters making their initial appearance for the day. A little bit of a different vibe than the rest of the day from what we've been experiencing. But again, so far, no major issues to report today.
How's the interaction been between the protesters and police today?
Yeah, well, we did see when that arrest was taking place, apparently someone threw something at police, and that's what got all those people arrested outside the federal building. But if you look right now, I mean, if we can scoot this way.
I think we just lost Matthew's signal. Obviously, a lot of signals happening here in downtown Los Angeles. Let's go back to Fox 7's Christina Gonzalez for a look at what's happening in Santa Ana.
Definitely a growing situation, a lot more people. Before I show you, though, I want you to hear a story, because these are the stories we're hearing. You know, people's friends, you know, these raids, when people show up, you want to hear it firsthand, because we're talking about a young woman who I guess was getting ready for her college graduation. What happened?
So basically, it's on social media where she shares her story saying that she was getting ready for her college graduation. Her dad went to go get the car ready to be able to make it to her graduation on time. And the moment he walked out, she saw the immigration outside of her house. She called her dad one time, he didn't answer. The second time, he didn't answer. The third time,
Maggie wants more without spending more, so she got Blink Mini 2 cameras to help her see more, catch more, and do more. Blink and get more.
And the agents didn't even give her the chance to say goodbye or I love you before they took her moment with her dad away, not knowing what they were going to do next with him. So now she has to live with that. Her family has to live with that. This poor man, that is a hard-working man, is taken from a family that he supports. They don't realize that they are not just hurting the immigrants, they're hurting their families, their children. They're letting their children witness all of this.
And, you know, the story you're telling us about, I was trying to get in touch with this young lady, and it repeats itself because a lot of people here are saying the same thing. You were having the raids out here. There was something at Home Depot, I understand.
Yes, there's many hard workers that go to Home Depot looking for jobs every single day, trying to make an honored pay. And they're there, and they don't expect it, but their lives fall apart in 1 second. These men come in regular clothes, they walk around acting like nothing, and then they take these families away. They destroy families every day.
Thank you so much for talking to us. I know you have to get back there. Thank you.
Please hit the like button.
And again, I wanted you to hear that because it's a friend of hers. And
If you're here, please hit the like button.
Young lady, and I talked to some of her friends, and these are just really difficult stories to hear, as emotional as they are for them. And you know, it's funny because a lot of the people who are here will tell us, you know, they understand, and they understand that if the whole idea was to go after criminals, bad people. Nobody wants a rapist or a murderer in their own community. It's this whole change as they see it, and as we have seen, when you go into Home Depot, what exactly are you targeting? I know I, for one, have asked repeatedly to our contacts, our social media contacts at Homeland Security, to tell us, okay, who are you targeting? Why? What's going on? And lately, we're not even getting answers from that, whereas before
they would say, okay, we're looking for this man who was wanted for this or that man. Now we're not getting any of that. So it's really hard to figure out what is the focus of these raids. And in the eyes of these people, they're completely unfair. So we'll see what the rest of the country, as they see this develop, what their opinion is. Because I think a lot of people who are not necessarily from Latin America, they're just immigrants, you know, they're sending me messages on social media. I thought this was about criminals. Wait a minute, I thought about this was... So what it is about, what it doesn't, what it becomes about, we'll have to see. But there's no question that there's some very emotional, sad tales out here.
All right, our colleague there, Christina Gonzalez in Santa Ana, Fox 11, still on this coverage here. We do want to take the opportunity, though, to take possibly our final commercial break of the hour. Remember, we're in this kind of limbo period, waiting for this press conference to happen there with Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles. So you can see there, everything is ready. We're just waiting for her to arrive. Speaking of California officials, just got this in. Take a look at this. This is breaking news right now. Governor Gavin Newsom says what we're seeing in Los Angeles goes far beyond Trump's call for deporting criminals. It's a step toward authoritarianism. It's our democracy at a crossroads. He says, watch live at 6:30 p.m. local time. So in about 45 minutes' time, Governor Gavin Newsom will address what he is calling democracy at a crossroads. This after his administration lost today in federal court. Remember, Newsom and Attorney General of the state, Rob Bonta, wanted an immediate emergency but temporary restraining order on the deployment of Marines to California. They didn't get it today. A federal judge denied that, though hearings on the merits of that will take place Thursday afternoon, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So we're going to be following that, monitoring that as we get closer to Thursday, whether a federal judge will rule in favor of the Newsom administration or the U.S. federal government. You see there, Hugo Lowell says, Judge Breyer has denied Newsom's request for an immediate restraining order on Trump deploying the military in Los Angeles, but sets a hearing for 1:30 p.m. Eastern. For all of you Supreme Court history nerds, favorite piece of trivia today, Judge Breyer there, the brother of former Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer. All right, let's get to that commercial break. Don't want to miss anything. We'll see you in 2 minutes. How you're feeling about restraining order.
8 p.m. tonight. 6 a.m.
Last time we had a curfew like that over here, Bradley, it was 3 days. Continues day by day at this point is one question. And the second one, when do you plan on reaching out to Donald Trump, President Trump? You said you want to talk with him. If you will reach out.
Actually, I started that reach out today, so we will see what happens. I will keep you posted.
Can you update us on the parameters of the curfew area? Just want to make sure people have heard that.
Yes, and it's the map that is right there. So it basically is all of downtown Los Angeles. But, you know, in LA, we identify by our freeways. So all of the freeway numbers are there. 110, the 5, the 10.
This is the area where the protests have been.
Yes, and actually that's a broader area that the protests have been focused. You know that the protests have been limited to about 5 streets in downtown Los Angeles. And again, that's why it's so important to let the people know this is not all of Los Angeles. If you put downtown Los Angeles in the context of the overall city map, you see how big it is. 1 square mile compared to 503 square miles.
Mayor, in terms of what the federal authorities are doing, I know you're saying they're not telling you when they're going to be doing these various things. Are you getting anywhere in terms of cooperation of notifying your police agencies in advance so they can make some plans to deploy if necessary to support the communities?
No, we're not. No, we're not. And we also don't know again about the ICE raids. And that's why I think, you know, I would appeal to the president to stop the ICE raids so that we can have stability in our city. I think about the families who are afraid to go to work and go to school. I was talking to a friend today who in her local grocery store, the shelves were empty. A lot of the shelves were empty because people aren't coming to work to stock the shelves. We have to look at the contribution that the immigrant population makes to our local economy. And you know that there are some industries that are the majority are immigrant labor. And so when you frighten immigrants and they don't want to come to work, you are hitting at the heart of our local economy. The nannies that can't show up, the gardeners that can't show up. That impacts households in a way that I don't think people often realize the extent.
I don't know if you heard earlier, the president referred to that it would look similar to how it did back in January. The LA wildfires did have federal law enforcement here. When you look at it for yourself as a leader of the city and as well, what are some of the difficulties when it comes to planning, not having unison with yourself, the state
And so I think I missed the first part of it. He said the reason why the wildfires were handled was because there were federal police.
You said it would look similar to how they did during the wildfires here in the aftermath of law enforcement here.
Yeah, I don't know, Chief. Maybe you want to respond to that. I don't think that question, and sometimes what the president says, it's difficult to kind of understand. What I will tell you, though, is that after the wildfires, were out, the president made sure we had ample resources with the Army Corps of Engineers, and it was a significant contributing factor to us having the fastest recovery of any location in comparison to where other wildfires have taken place. It contributed to the fact that in the Palisades now, we have over 2,700 lots that are cleared where people can be rebuilding now. I was at a property a couple of weeks ago where the frame of the house is already up. This, to me, is drastically different. That was in complete cooperation and coordination with the federal government. Right now, we are in the dark. We don't know when things are going to happen. One thing we're sure about, and I think that the chief would agree with me, is that we have the capacity to address this situation here, and we don't need armies or National Guard, especially that we didn't even ask for. And the idea that the president took the power away from the governor to do this it was really just unacceptable. But Chief, did you want to, if you want to?
Thank you. To that issue, we have a protocol in place that we use, and when we are dealing with something like this, where it takes the resources away from our regular patrol duties and ability to provide the service we do, we mobilize the department, and so that brings in people from vacation and our days off and allows us to use them. We've mobilized the Office of Operations, the biggest part of the department, and our motor officers. We're looking to expand that with additional officers from within. We requested through the Sheriff mutual aid, which then is coordinated by the Office of Emergency Management in the state OES, Emergency Services, with the sheriff, and they bring in then surrounding communities and in this case counties to be able to help supplement our resources to deal with the issues at hand. They are tremendous partners. We've worked very closely together for the past couple of days now, and I think we have seen a significant improvement in things, and we will continue to watch for that as we move forward. We're hopeful with this curfew that'll give us additional tool as well to be able to bring this chapter to a close.
Okay, y'all, I gotta go. Y'all not getting my likes up, so I'm gonna go ahead and go.
Yeah, and the I guess the sequence would be, as I mentioned, we request mutual aid, our partner agencies from throughout, in this case, the 7-county area. The next step then, if we weren't able to handle the issue, is to request through the governor, through the sheriff, to the governor, and the emergency OES at the state, National Guard to be deployed. We are nowhere near that in this environment. We believe we can do what we need to do with the resources that we now have access to, and I think we've seen a dramatic increase in arrests over the last couple of days. I believe that will continue, and that will help bring some order to what we've seen in the past few days. So, no.
What's the mean? I'm seeing where the emergency operations center at level 2 activation. What does that mean to the people of LA to know we're at level 2?
Yeah, there's anybody want to? Yeah, go ahead. Probably more specifically, Troy.
Chief Chow, that's okay. Blake Chow from Office of Special Operations. So
just like our Department of Operations Center across the hall, when we get into a emergency that needs to be managed, the EOC can be pushed up to a level 2, and that means all the other city departments that work for the mayor come in and have a raptor, and we're able to coordinate city response to anything that's going on within the city. That's what level 2 is.
Let me also just add to your question that you were asking. You know, now that the president has taken over authority of the National Guard, Chief, when you were describing the way it should go, now that has been disrupted. And I think that that's important. I know one of the things that the chief said that we're going to focus on is trying to gather as many local resources as possible.
You want high-performance tools, long-lasting tools, affordable tools.
Los Angeles police officers, and trying to bolster the officers that will be stationed downtown, because downtown is where the crisis is right now. Yes, any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
All right, as you see there, we have been waiting for this news conference to get underway there in Los Angeles, as we just heard from LA's mayor, Karen Bass, speaking, and we did get an update here. The biggest notion is that there is now a curfew going to happen into the overnight hours between 8 p.m. and 6 p.m.
If y'all want me to continue,
Portions of downtown Los
you need to get the likes
There are
up.
exceptions, though, for people traveling to and from work, as well as credentialed media. We'll go ahead and talk a lot more about this, staying on this story and on top of it as we have for the last 5 days. In the meantime, let's go ahead and check back in with our coverage partners there at Fox 11 in Los Angeles. They have much more on the latest.
An overwhelming show of force from the LAPD and from other law enforcement agencies today. It seems to be the message that you can keep doing the protests, but we're done with allowing the lawlessness that we have seen in Los Angeles for the last several days. So that's the live picture from there. We also want to show you some video from earlier. This was crowds protesting. This was on the 101 freeway in downtown Los Angeles. For a moment, that was shut down, and then they got folks out of that area, and now traffic is moving once again on the freeway. Fox 11's Matthew Seedorf has been covering the protest day after day. He's back with us live right now. Matthew, your reaction to this idea of a curfew, which is something a lot of folks have been calling for.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm surprised, but I think it could work. There are obviously hundreds of people downtown. I'm not sure the word has gotten out just yet to the protesters. We had just one person just came up and asked me, is there a curfew tonight? So there's rumors about it, but it's not for certain that people out here are aware just yet. But you can see the National Guard is out here outside of the federal building. They've been protecting it all day long, and the last couple of days we're seeing some protesters out here giving them their peace of mind while they walk by. But for the most part, it seems like the protesters are kind of walking around trying to figure out where the main place is to go. We saw them, a couple hundred of them. The biggest group that we saw was walking in this way about 30, 45 minutes ago, and as of right now, we haven't been able to meet up to where they are. So just trying to see where the main conglomerate is taking place, but this is the situation right now outside the federal building. I'll go ahead and send it back to you.
Yeah, and of course we see that National Guard behind him in place to protect that federal building. Matthew Seedorf, thank you so much. So let's show you the map of what we're talking about. So this is an overall map. What you see in green is the city of Los Angeles, and I put this out in social media today, and it got a lot of attention, this idea that essentially 99% of the city of Los Angeles has not had issues. Almost everything in terms of the violence, in terms of the problems, have been in this 1 square mile, which is the area of downtown LA, which is highlighted there. That's why this is going to be a local emergency that is going to be focused right there. So that is the area that they are keeping people out of tonight. And that's the curfew. It's so far only announced for tonight, but we could have more nights to come depending on what what happens tonight and what we see in the streets tomorrow. Joining us now with some perspective on all of this is Isaac Bryan, who is a member of the Assembly, represents Los Angeles. I know you've been out in the streets with these protesters. First off, your reaction to the news of the curfew tonight.
I think it's definitely in the mayor's prerogative, but I think, as you've mentioned, we're talking about 1% of the entire city. We're also talking about largely peaceful protests. We're seeing these incidents.
Okay, y'all, if y'all don't want to hit the like button, please just leave and let the people who want to hit the like button stay. It's just that simple. If you can't hit the like button, leave.
We saw them last night causing all sorts of chaos. And this potentially is a solution to that problem, right? To basically stop those people from being out on the streets late at night.
Well, we've definitely seen this work in the past, and I would liken this to the map that we saw, right? 99% of the people who are out on the streets are protesting peacefully. There's a small fraction that are dictating the narrative of the whole, but I refuse to let them define the movement that's happening. I've seen beautiful joy and solidarity and celebration and protest in these streets, and it's what makes LA beautiful.
So talk to us about your main perspective,
Tap your screen.
of why you're out there protesting.
Tap your screen, double tap your face of your phone.
Shocking our city in a way that is unlike what the president said.
Double tap it.
Right? He told us he was going
Or there's a thumbs up.
You rating Home Depots, you rated 2 car washes.
Or you have 3 buttons, three dots.
He was just a customer that they profiled.
Click the 3 dots.
The criminal element that he told us he was going after, which we had problems with to begin with. It's also interesting that a week ago we didn't have any problems like this as a city. We were eating popcorn watching him and Elon Musk fight, not expecting anything like this to occur. And now that we've seen this chaos, it has been created by him.
So you think this is a distraction politically for President Trump to turn the page?
I mean, I'm not going to go into
Y'all don't see the
him and Elon and the Epstein files and all of that, but I know that this is a major distraction for the country, and LA has a lot of issues that it needs to focus on, especially when it comes to recovering from these.
Y'all don't see a button that says a thumb up. That's a like button.
They're waging a war on American citizens.
Well, and that could potentially complicate things when you see the governor and President Trump going back and forth. The governor still wants $40 billion from President Trump for wildfire relief. We'll see what this does for that. But talk to us more about this car wash situation you're talking about. This is in Culver City, right? What happened?
The Culver City car wash, a Westchester car wash. ICE agents rolled up, didn't identify themselves, started harassing folks who worked at the car washes and customers, and ended up leaving with about 8 people. And we don't know where they are. We've heard reports that they're all the way in Texas. There's a very tragic video of a 15-year-old son of a patron, Arturo Vasquez, who was picked up. He wasn't working at the car wash. There was no way to know that he was there. He was getting his car cleaned, and now his 15-year-old son doesn't know where his father is. We have to do better than this. We are better than this. This is un-American.
How do you think illegal immigration should be handled?
I think we have to have a process that respects the asylum process, that makes sure that America is a welcoming place for everybody, and that we differentiate between people who are working hard to contribute to an American society that doesn't always contribute back to them. We have many people who pay, for example, into federal taxes, don't withdraw Social Security back. All they're trying to do is put food on their tables. That's what we've been for other constituencies around the world. That's who we've been for everybody. We are a nation of immigrants.
But I know you're one who said nobody's above the law, right? And there are laws. And there are laws that say you can't come here illegally. And there are people that have broken those laws for years. There'd be a consequence for that.
I think we also have to recognize that a lot of our laws are difficult to follow or impossible to follow. I'll give you an example. I was outside the federal building yesterday with undocumented folks who had court hearings in the federal building. I saw their paperwork, and the paperwork said very clearly, if you don't show up to this hearing, you will be removed from this country. The National Guard told us the building was closed for 3 days. They wouldn't let me get in. They wouldn't let them get into their hearings. Turns out there were hearings going on inside at that exact time. It's when David Huerta's arraignment occurred. What happens to those people who were trying to make their hearings? Did they get deported somewhere even though they were trying to do the legal way? The legal way is broken. The system is broken. And one of the reasons it's broken is because President Trump wouldn't let a bipartisan solution get through Congress, and he hasn't proposed anything himself since he took office.
And so where do we go from here? Because obviously the rhetoric, the tension, very, very high. This is not sustainable that we stay at this place.
No.
How do we bring things down? How do we get the city under control? How do we get rid of
Henry, did you hit the like button?
I think you take the terrorizing of Los Angeles.
Did you double tap the screen like this on your phone?
Marines who have been trained tactically to kill enemy combatants. You don't put them on the LA streets. You allow for local law enforcement and local communities to rise up and speak back in an honest and peaceful way.
So if that doesn't happen, because
He's a dictator. A lot of people voted him back in.
so we're probably going to
I don't know what they expected.
How do we coexist?
Some Hispanics voted for him. I don't know what they expected.
We have to mobilize. We have to be active. He is escalating this conflict. If he won't back down and he's daring the people of Los Angeles to allow him.
A lot of these people who were deported voted for him. So they voted to be deported.
To allow him to override everything that we stand for.
By the way, we're looking at some video. This was the video we just
They
showed
felt
us
like it was better to have him, to deport him, than to vote for an African American woman.
That there is peace in these streets.
So this is the outcome. That's the reality.
As anything else, what we're seeing.
You may not like it, but that's the truth, and this gonna set you free. Hopefully, if you're not a Hispanic.
Isaac Bryan, Democratic Assembly member representing Los Angeles, representing.
I hate that. I can't stand it. It irks my nerves thinking Hispanics voted for him.
Steve Hilton, who was a Republican.
All right, our thanks to our coverage partners there at Fox 11 in Los Angeles. They've been on top of this story for the last 5 days, as well as we've been covering some of these anti-ICE protests that have been happening there in Los Angeles. I want to put this up on your screen one more time. These are some of the vantage points that we're still getting into our newsroom at this point, but you can see.
But a lot of people voted for this.
Again, we also want to remind you,
and a lot of people who are deported, they families that are legally here
predict what exactly will hop up on the screen, but of course,
voted.
do our very best to make sure that nothing is going to be on the screen that is too. There we go. There's another example there again of some of those things that come on that might be offensive. So again, viewer discretion is advised. We'll do our best here. Also want to remind you though that as we're staying on top of this, we just heard from LA's Mayor Karen Bass, and shortly we'll be hearing from California's Governor Gavin Newsom. He's saying that what we're seeing right now in Los Angeles goes far beyond Trump's call for deporting criminals. It's a step towards authoritarianism. It's our democracy at a crossroads. Watch live at 6:30 p.m. That's local time. So 9:30 p.m. on the East Coast. We'll be carrying that in full as well here on Live Now from Fox. So
some people who have been deported that's legally here. That's not true.
Governor Gavin Newsom, after he filed
that is absolutely not true.
To block the National Guard members and Marines
and Trump know they've been deported.
Raids there in
he don't care.
He wrote in a statement earlier today on X saying that Trump is turning the U.S. military against American citizens, but ultimately that request was denied. That emergency request was denied by a federal judge. And so in the wake of this, we'll be hearing from Governor Gavin Newsom very soon to get his thoughts. All right, wanted to bring that to you here on Live Now from Fox. We're going to take this time to slide away for a 2-minute commercial break. Much more when we return.
And say, we're going to target this person who they believe to be a criminal. If somebody else who happens to just be illegal is nearby, they get wrapped into it as well.
But that's what we all want to avoid, by the way, including ICE. If you look at what Tom Homan, the border czar and really supervising a lot of these operations, he himself says that. He says, when we don't get cooperation, that's what happens. And we, ICE, want to avoid that. You don't see these scenes in other states. It's here in California because we're a sanctuary state. And that's why I say, if I were the governor now, we wouldn't be in this situation, because even within our sanctuary law, SB 54, passed in 2017, there is discretion for the state and local authorities to work with ICE to help them arrest the people that all of us would agree shouldn't be here. Violent criminals who've already had due process, who've been through the system and given deportation notices.
So I know you think that it's too late on the curfew, but do you think it's a good idea?
Well, I don't want to second judge their operational decisions, but if they think it's the right idea, I would support it. It's certainly in the right direction of trying to restore order, and that's the motivation, I'm sure. I mean, I was right there. I'm actually staying in the curfew zone, so we'll see if we can get back in time. But I think that restoring order is the priority, and that is a classic way of doing that. What I want to see is whether that...
All right, as you see there, we're just listening in once again to Fox LA's coverage. So if you've been with us here on Live Now from Fox, we've been talking about this news conference that's set to get underway from California's Governor Gavin Newsom. So we had an image of him for just a few seconds, but I do want to let you know it was due to some of those audio issues that this press conference is being put out directly from the state of California. It seems like they're working to address those. And when Gavin Newsom steps back up to the microphone to deliver that address, we will certainly bring it to you again once those audio issues have been fixed. In the meantime, though, we are going to continue on here with our coverage on Live Now from Fox of some of these other rallies that are going on as well. I want to put this up on your screen. This is also happening there in the Los Angeles area. It's a vigil that's being held, and a prayer vigil in honor. In the meantime, while these ICE raids are being held there in Los Angeles, let's listen into this here on Live Now.
Return them to their family. Return them to their neighborhoods. Set us free as immigrants in this country. We love this country. We want this country to love us back. Thank you.
So you can count on that prayer. If we put that prayer into action. Some people say that prayer and politics shouldn't mix, but we know that justice is what love looks like in public. So we are here praying in public and working in public. And with that, it is a great honor to welcome here to the stage somebody who represents our public, Mayor Karen Bass.
I am already speaking.
Good evening, everybody that is here today. When I look out at this crowd, this represents the beauty of our city. Everywhere, everybody represented. Everybody.
Yeah, you can dial in. Go ahead.
Hang up on me. Because we stand together, and our message is to stop the raids. That has to end. We cannot create a sense of fear in families. Maybe I shouldn't go to school. Maybe I shouldn't go to work. Maybe I should just sit here. Maybe I shouldn't go to my appointment that I have papers for and I am legal and I go to report on an annual basis and I find out that somebody else was detained. Maybe I shouldn't do that. We cannot accept the uncertainty that has been created in this environment here today, led by the leadership in Washington, D.C. We cannot accept that. And let me just say that years ago, I saw families' separation up close and personal. I was in McMillan, Texas. I saw those children when they were reunited with their parents, the toddlers. They went to see their mothers and their fathers came to talk to them, and the kids were in shock because they didn't know what to do.
Can you go ahead and hang up?
The trauma that those kids experienced then will be trauma that will carry them throughout their lives. And the fear that is happening now, if your mother, if your father, if your brother, if your spouse was detained, that fear of not being able to find them, not knowing where they're going, not knowing if they're going to another country, maybe a country that they are completely unfamiliar with, they should not be the policy of our nation. I'd like to ask you to join me in prayer. Eternal God, in these days of great challenge for our city, state, and country, we turn to you for guidance and strength. You are our present help in the time of trouble. We pray for our city.
All right, as you see there, LA Mayor Karen Bass attending this vigil there, calling for nonviolence amid these protests and the ICE raids. We do also want to listen in because we have that video message as well from California's Governor Gavin Newsom speaking. Let's listen.
Many religions, traditions, from
the law. Again, thanks to our law enforcement officers and the majority of Angelenos who protested peacefully, the situation was winding down and was concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown. But that's not what Donald Trump wanted. He again chose escalation.
All right, that shot going into the black there for just a second, but it does continue on with that message that we have from California's governor. Let's listen back in.
Women trained for foreign combat, not domestic law enforcement. We honor their service. We honor their bravery. But we do not want our streets militarized by our own armed forces. Not in LA, not in California, not anywhere. We're seeing unmarked cars in school parking lots, kids afraid of attending their own graduation. Trump is pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses. That's just weakness masquerading as strength. Donald Trump's government isn't protecting our communities. They're traumatizing our communities. And that seems to be the entire point. California will keep fighting. We'll keep fighting on behalf of our people, all of our people, including in the courts. Just yesterday, we filed a legal challenge to Donald Trump's reckless deployment of American troops to a major American city. Today, we sought an emergency court order to stop the use of the American military to engage in law enforcement activities across Los Angeles. If some of us could be snatched off the streets without a warrant, based only on suspicion or skin color, then none of us are safe. Authoritarian regimes begin by targeting people who are least able to defend themselves, but they do not stop there. Trump and his loyalists, they thrive on division because it allows them to take more power and exert even more control. And by the way, Trump, he's not opposed to lawlessness and violence as long as it serves him. What more evidence do we need than January 6th? I ask everyone, take time, reflect on this perilous moment. A president who wants to be bound by no law or constitution, perpetuating a unified assault on American traditions. This is a president who in just over 140 days has fired government watchdogs that could hold him accountable for corruption and fraud. He's declared a war on culture, on history, on science, on knowledge itself. Databases quite literally are vanishing. He's delegitimizing news organizations, and he's assaulting the First Amendment. And the threat of defunding them, at threat, he's dictating what universities themselves can teach. He's targeting law firms and the judicial branch that are the foundations of an orderly and civil society. He's calling for a sitting governor to be arrested for no other reason than to, in his own words, for getting elected. And we all know this Saturday, he's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past. Look, this isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority, commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state. This is about all of us. This is about all of us. California may be first. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other democracies are next. Is democracy. Democracy is under assault. Is before our eyes. This moment has arrived. We have feared has taken a wrecking ball. He's taking a wrecking ball to our founding fathers' historic project. Co-equal branches of government. Independent. We're no longer any checks and balances. Congress is nowhere to be found. Speaker Johnson has completely abdicated that responsibility. The rule of law has given way to the rule of founding fathers. They didn't live. Founding fathers. They didn't live. See this kind of moment. See this time for all of us to stand up. It's time for all of us to stand up. Justice Brandeis, in a democracy at best, the most important office, the most important office, all due respect, is not the presidency, is not certainly not governor, and it's certainly not governor. Office is the most important office, is office of this moment.
All right, as you see there, it appears that the audio there from the source still not clean at this point. We've been trying to bring you this message that California Governor Gavin Newsom was delivering there amid these LA protests. So that's not something that's happening here on our side in our newsroom. It's the issue that they're having with the source as well. So as soon as they get that cleared up and we're able to give you a clean feed.
to employ those forces. But again, litigation will continue. Newsom is not going to just give up at that point. And so in further litigation of that, could work against him in the argument that, well, you were already suggested by the governor that they don't want you here, and you're continuing to bring in troops, and so you're looking for a way to get around what the governor, who is the head of California, is saying that he wants.
But what you're saying is the police chief here in the city of Los Angeles has already says it's our responsibility to police the streets, not the responsibility of the National Guard. That's the difference, the line between the responsibilities of the National Guard, or if indeed Marines wind up in front of the federal building in downtown LA or Westwood, they're not supposed to be policing.
Absolutely. That falls within the purview of local law enforcement. They're the ones who are designed to assess the threats on a daily level. They're used to policing civilian populations. The military is not equipped and designed to do that and respond in the same way to threats. And that's why it is a very limited use that it's supposed to be if they are being used on U.S. soil. So in this case, only to protect the federal buildings and only to protect the federal operations. So in this case, carrying out the raids.
Right. So that is in fact what LAPD Chief Jim McDonald said. He pointed out those people are trained for international conflicts. This is a domestic conflict. This is the city of Los Angeles, and the officers involved are experienced with the city of Los Angeles, not these Marines or the National Guard, correct, that are coming in. And coming in, some might say, some critics would say, it's more theatrics than it is for a purpose.
Yes, and the other things that are to be considered too is, for example, with the use of the National Guard and even with the Marines, those are not the functions that they are typically carrying out. And the National Guard, they're employed for things like the wildfires. We're getting into summer. We need to be able to conserve those resources for when they're really needed. So there has to be a strong showing that they were absolutely needed. There was an immediate harm that required them to be here. So that's the burden that the Trump administration really has to meet.
Meantime, not just the city of Los Angeles, so not Mayor Karen Bass, but also the people down in Orange County. They're now expressing, that politicians there are expressing the fact that they want to make sure that the National Guard, and I believe what the Orange County supervisor said was all your militarized equipment needs to get out of our county. So is that in any way persuasive to a judge? And what do we know about this judge, by the way?
Well, it is persuasive in the fact that it again speaks to other officials who are saying, we don't want this presence here. And it speaks to, is this use of the National Guard, is it really serving the broader interests here? But again, courts have been quite deferential to the executive function powers of the president. They have cited in past opinions that they do very much.
This is costing a lot of money. We already complaining about the cost of eggs.
How do you also show that the harm that's being caused is directly tied to the increased military presence? Some of the looting, for example, and other activities might be harder to make that leap of how do you know what their intent was and that was directly fueled by the president's actions. So that would also present a wrinkle there in the legal argument.
For sure. I think there's a lot of people who feel like that particular argument is not persuasive, at least in the court of public opinion. But people do want peace, and so those that are very much in favor of what the Trump administration is doing are saying,
for those of us with service animals, preparation is key. Ensure your buddy always has their ID.
The point of the suit was also to point out that the states are sovereign, and this most recent action by the Trump administration threatens that sovereignty. Can you speak to that a little?
Absolutely. There is definitely a strong argument there. Again, the language of the statute specifically says that bringing in military force shall be authorized by the governor. So overstepping that chain, which is really the tie to whether forces are needed because they are closest to the site to really be able to evaluate that, is problematic and speaks to the separation of powers issues present with the 10th Amendment, where the courts are very strong in upholding the tenets of federalism. It's a big part of what our country's laws and values are based upon.
Mary David, thank you. I just want to point out it's 45 minutes into the curfew. Oh, pardon me, an hour and 45 minutes into the curfew. And as we look at our live cameras downtown, we can see that police are there. There still are other people filming and recording. And I wish I knew to what degree or what kind of credentials that the police need from the media or from whomever is still there in order to prove that they should be there, that they are allowed to be there. I know that there are some reporters who come downtown and they wear their press credentials on a lanyard. At the same time, I want to point out that the LAPD and the LASD, they started to make the ability to get a press credential a little tougher, a little more strict. You had to really prove what kind of publication you worked for, or in the case of Fox 11, what broadcast you work for, what station rather, and prove it with a letter from the manager, from somebody, a superior, that does indeed validate the fact that you are meant to be in this kind of situation and covering this kind of breaking news. As we're watching, a lot of people walking along, so you see that guy with his phone up, most likely he's streaming, we don't know where, perhaps to the Citizen app. But again, you know, if you're not working for a bona fide organization, I'm surprised that they're not, I mean, perhaps if they're moving, they're going past the Marukai in that plaza there. But it's just an interesting time period for sure. What are the impressions you've gotten? Have you been down there at all? I don't know why you would, but you've, I'm sure, watched the coverage to see all these people and the way they're being pushed out of Little Tokyo in this case and downtown LA in general.
I haven't been there in person, but the footage is very compelling, and it does present other questions when there are these limitations on press as well that speak to First Amendment issues, because there is freedom of the press under the Constitution. And so, again, the restrictions on that do raise questions.
Well, again, the credentialed media are allowed to be in the curfew zone. One could argue that there's also the right to free speech and the right to protest. So where does the
peaceful protest,
local governments and police,
a right to peaceful protest,
the statute that allows them to set a curfew?
That goes back to the nature of harm and the threat of violence. So there are certain circumstances where that is allowed, and here where things have escalated at night, that does fall within their purview in a situation of massive groups of populations that are meeting and where properties might be destroyed, and there has been some destruction in the area. But that line of who is allowed access as
double tap your screen, get the likes up,
freely assemble, that is a question in the other time frames that are raised, and also in how broadly this could extend, and what the possibilities are for saying this is too much and protesters just have to leave altogether.
Well, again, I think the line in the sand was the 23 businesses in the downtown area that were looted, damaged, and had all kinds of losses due to these bad actors, due to the agitators, what have you. I don't know how you want to describe them. Meantime, we continue to watch the live cameras that are showing more people that are being assessed by police, being detained, put into those flexi cuff, zip tie kind of handcuffs, and also seeing a lot of people who are leaving. There was a parking lot because of course we are a car culture, so most people who wound up, I don't know about most, but a lot of the people who wound up in the downtown area for these demonstrations, they found a parking lot, they parked their cars, now they get to the cars and it's time to leave. So it is suggestive that we're watching somebody now who's tagging that building in the upper left corner there of the larger screen. He was tagging whatever that building was. He was caught in the act on our camera, tagging a window. And that is the heartbreaking part of watching this kind of live coverage. When you see someone being destructive, that's the kind of thing that so many people, including those who are demonstrating against the ICE raid, saying, peaceful protest, we do not want to be among those that are destructive or looting, and it plays into the narrative that the Trump administration has been putting out. So that is, it was a very quick moment there, but I did see that he was tagging that building. So much is happening tonight on this fifth night of the ICE protests, but it is now coming on to 2 hours into the curfew. The curfew seems to be effective rather, but as you see there, as they're walking through, that's part of the Weller Plaza near Marukai, and as you see them, there still are people there, so they haven't 100% been able to clear out Little Tokyo, downtown Los Angeles. People there are moving, so that's the good news, but in terms of actually enforcing a curfew 100% with 100% effectiveness, there are still people who are meandering around and shouldn't be there. And as Gina Silva pointed out, there are regular announcements telling people it's been almost 2 hours since the curfew went into effect. You need to get out. So at what point do police go from please move, please leave to okay, stand right there, I'm going to now cuff you? We're not quite sure. It could be something as simple as being a little too close to the federal building and not moving close enough or fast enough. Okay, we see in the upper left corner a whole line of police officers now jogging somewhere, perhaps to take on another group of the protesters who refuse to leave the downtown LA area, or it could be as simple as they got word of an area that is either a hot spot or a difficult spot, so they want to make sure that they get to, and it's just interesting to see that there are still people right there on that corner. I believe that could be the corner where Gina was, across from her, where they're just standing there and they're not abiding by the rules of the curfew. They're not supposed to be there, and the only exceptions were those who are experiencing homelessness, those who perhaps work in the downtown area, and credentialed members of the media. But that little group there, they're just standing right there on the corner. Again, are you familiar with signs and symbols? Because it means something when somebody is displaying an upside down American flag. Typically it's anarchists. Okay, so we are watching 3 different views of what happened with the curfew and how the curfew went into effect at 8 o'clock and how people are responding. They are responding, the ones that are stragglers,
which is the way that the mayor and city leaders and law enforcement wants it with that curfew in order. You know, you might ever see, also once in a while, see a guy on a bike, but, you know, he probably lives here, or who knows. But it's good to know that the streets are otherwise pretty empty and not a lot of people out on the streets, except, you know, I am just beginning to hear, I might be able to hear the crowd coming this way.
You know, we talked to a sergeant from CHP earlier who talked about the training local and state law enforcement receives to deal with Los Angeles specifically, with California specifically, in exactly these situations, because they can escalate so quickly. So there is a reason that they use this tactical response, that they exercise restraint when they have, that they're staged in certain areas, that they move in when they do, and they're familiar with these communities and with the geography
photography and with protests because they've done them here before. So we know that they've been talking. They have coordination among about 14 agencies locally and at the state level, and that they are planning all of this and have planned for it.
You know what? While we have Lori there, and Lori, you might know this answer to this question. I don't remember when during the 2020, the George Floyd protest, did we have as many agencies together working to control the crowd?
You know, I was talking about that with someone last night as well, and I don't think we did. I mean, we certainly had, you know, multiple departments from around the county that came in to assist, but I mean, I don't remember there being as layered and as complex of a response as we have seen in this. And that might be lessons learned even from that experience. Maybe that they decided that that's the way to go. But yeah, it does seem more layered this time around than we saw in 2020. And you know, and to the point that Rudabeh was just talking about, you know, they are trained, and what are they doing?
Double tap your screen.
So they might have just gotten word, right, that they need to go somewhere else, so they're going to load up, and we're going to see them on the move very shortly here. Yeah, they're packing it up, and they're going to go somewhere.
So Lori, really quick,
So let's watch how that happens.
SkyCal too, is they're passing a Metro bus, and they're tagging the Metro bus as it goes past. So the bus got caught up in this. You know, Metro had suspended some rail service through downtown. Obviously, the buses are still moving through there, though, and you have all these people that are just getting kind of, you know, stuck in the chaos, if you will, as they're moving towards you. You hear them coming towards you a little bit more, Lori?
Yeah, I thought I did, in fact. Yeah, they're on the move now.
There they go.
And they are also, I will say, right behind another Metro bus. And I looked inside that Metro bus. There were maybe 2 or 3 people on it. So clearly word has spread about, you know, not being out and about. But I'm going to see if these guys are going to take a left here. Yeah, they're taking a left up on Hill. So they're probably going to loop around, right? And then try and meet whatever is going down further down on Spring, maybe? Did they leave Spring? You know that?
They're still going. They pushed down. I did hear LAPD helicopter request those units to go lights and sirens like you just saw going past Lori. And we're watching right now from SkyCal as more, looks like spray painting is going on right there, or somebody, you know, doing something to the front door of a business there. Yeah, they're tagging it. So that's exactly why the curfew's in effect. They're trying to prevent this from happening. And you see that guy shaking that can of paint in his hand there as he's continuing to move down. This is at 4th and Spring that the chopper is focused on, not far from where Lori is, and those LAPD officers starting to move in. You're talking about CHP coming in as well, so they've got a lot of the resources that we've been talking about coming through here. This is the group, though, as we are continuing to watch them just, you know, tag and tag and tag here as they go by. They tagged a Metro bus that was just stopped in the middle of the street. Lori said she saw another bus that had about, you know, 2 or 3 people on it, so thankfully not a very full bus. Hopefully a lot of people that, you know, are in the downtown area got the message that this is not the place to be tonight, and now we are seeing that play out here as we start to see more graffiti happening. LAPD, CHP, allied agencies, and here we are tagging another bus. Or the same bus, actually. I think this is the same bus that got hit earlier by those other people that were walking by. So that's all happening. And again, they'll look at this. These buses have cameras. They'll try to use it later on to try to come back and identify these people that, you know, are responsible for tagging these buses. As we wrap up KCAL News at 9, we begin KCAL News at 10 with Susie Sa and Juan Fernandez.
And breaking news here on KCAL News at 10, a curfew in place, arrests happening right now, but some protesters refusing to leave tonight.
And that's despite a massive police presence on the streets of LA tonight. There it is. It is night 5 of the protests against immigration rape.
Summer is here and you've got places to go. All good road trips start here. Just make sure you're road ready. Book your road ready.
The 1 square mile area of the city near the federal building.
This is a live shot from SkyCal tonight. KCAL's Tom Waite, you've seen dozens of arrests already happening tonight. Tom, can you hear us?
And kind of, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Hello? Oh, okay. Hello. Okay. Well, I didn't know if you could hear us. So we're in front of the federal building, which much clearer now at the scene than it was just a few minutes ago. And police now zooming off, presumably to the area that Lori was talking about just a short time ago. But let's take you through some clips, to give you a sense of what's been happening over the last few hours. There's a number of issues that were happening right around curfew time, around 8 o'clock. That's when police really swarmed this area. They converged and broke up the crowd. There was some resistance from the crowd as the folks were dispersing, and there were a number of arrests that were made here just in the area in front of the federal complex. Remember, this is where the detention facility is, just behind the federal building. So that is kind of been an area of focus of protesters. By the way, very peaceful protesting throughout the afternoon and into the evening hours. People from all different backgrounds, faiths came out, and there was obviously a vigil as well. But it was beautiful to see a lot of different people from all ages and backgrounds really coming together in a peaceful way. And given what we've seen over the last couple of nights, a few nights, there's been a lot of violent confrontations and tear gassing and people throwing things at police officers and projectiles and all kinds of stuff. So at the end of today, obviously there was a bit of drama. There was some arrests made. There was even a police mounted unit was dealing with someone who threw something at them. And that was a little bit concerning, obviously very frightening for a second. We didn't know how the horse was going to react. Police raised their non-lethal, less than lethal weapons. Thankfully, they didn't have to use them, at least in this incident today. Right now, though, a column of LAPD cruisers zooming off to other parts of downtown, presumably to handle more situations. And I want to send it back to you because I know there is more action playing out in other parts of downtown right now.
All right, Tom Waite reporting there live from downtown LA on the ground there. Thank you so much. We want to take you now to SkyCal. This is a view from a bird's eye view of what's happening right now in downtown LA. You can see the cars there blocking traffic there. A lot of these cars actually involved in the contingent of protesters who were marching through downtown LA against the curfew orders tonight. I want to go now to our Lori Perez, who's also live on the ground there in downtown LA for a different angle. Lori.
Yeah, we're at First and Spring Street. Last we heard, the protesters, the crowd was still marching down Spring Street to this corner, headed in our direction. And just moments ago, there was a force of police officers here. They, since then, went off lights and sirens to another location, but you can see there is still a line of police officers across the way here. Not as many as were just here, but still some, and LAPD's helicopter is overhead tracking the protesters. It's hard to tell from where we are if they are still on Spring Street or they've moved up to Hill Street, but we are certainly in the location where if they're still on Spring Street, they are probably heading our way. I will tell you, we have been mobile throughout this city for the last couple of hours trying to find the protesters. Oops. You know, we're like these LAPD cars, except we're on foot. But much like them, we've been just all over these blocks in downtown Los Angeles trying to track where the crowd is going. And we have not seen, since the 8 o'clock curfew went into effect, we've seen fewer and fewer people on the streets, which is exactly what the mayor wants and what city leaders and law enforcement wants once they put that curfew in place because of the tremendous amount of graffiti. In fact, you know, behind the line of police officers behind me, you can probably see an example of just how much graffiti there is on the buildings all throughout downtown Los Angeles. We did see two workers yesterday working diligently with tiny little tools, getting to work, trying to clean up some of that graffiti. It's going to be a tremendous project throughout many blocks of downtown Los Angeles. But tonight, you know, where we are at the moment is calm, but as we've been saying, that could change in a minute because, you know, if that crowd of people who are defying the curfew order at this point, if they show up here any minute now, things could escalate because police have repeatedly been saying, you know, if you're not off the streets, if you don't work here, if you don't live here, if you're not a member of the press, if you are on the streets, you could face arrest. And I know that over in Tom's location, situation. He has seen dozens of people arrested. We certainly have seen, you know, the LAPD, that big white bus pass by us, so we knew that they were starting to stage and get into a position where they could make arrests and start loading people up to take them away. So we're just kind of in a little bit of a waiting game right now, waiting situation at this point, waiting to see if that group doesn't indeed come in our direction.
Yeah, we do see some traffic in the area still moving through, Lori, and SkyCal is also showing us a group of officers on a corner, kind of peeking around the corner there, and also a long line of cruisers as well. Mike, any idea what might be happening there?
Well, you've got CHP that is certainly mobilizing. This is also an interesting group of people just sitting in the back of the truck there. I don't know what they're exactly up to here, but yeah, you've got CHP mobilizing. We are just listening to something, and we're going to try to move the helicopter over there, but about potentially an injured officer. We don't know how that happened, but it appears to be somewhere in the area of downtown, so we're working on gathering a few more details with that. And Kelly, I want to ask if we can put my computer in an inset box here, because I want to show you exactly the area under the curfew. So this is basically all of downtown LA, even extended over into kind of the Lincoln Heights area a little bit, and then up into Chinatown. All of that is under a curfew. And we talked about this earlier, but the Walter Disney Concert Hall, LA Phil, canceled their concert tonight. There was another adaptation of Hamlet that was canceled tonight at another theater in downtown LA because of this curfew. So you have the people that are still down there, still not necessarily wanting to go along with the program here, but everywhere inside of that red is within the curfew that started at 8 o'clock tonight, 2 hours and 6 minutes ago at this point. Now, I did ask the mayor's office for an exact copy of the order, the curfew order, as well as the local emergency order that will give us a lot of clarity on exactly the specificities of who is allowed and who is not. Generally speaking, though, it is people that have legitimate business in the area, which would be anybody that lives there, as we look at a field force of CHP officers there on the sidewalk and a lot of cop cars there by CHP. But anybody that lives in the area, anybody that is going to and from work in the area, credentialed members of the press would be allowed, and that should be about it. So, you know, that's what they're, you know, who they're looking for. Is anybody else that doesn't fit that bill is subject to arrest, as we have seen, as you're looking at Pershing Square there at the top of the screen. But basically what's been kind of going on is law enforcement has now basically gotten a hold of the groups that were stationary. They've dealt with
I
them,
need
and
12
now
likes.
12
likes, please.
With the taggers and the agitators that are still out there,
right? And they're continuing to just kind of move
Double
down
tap
the streets
your-
of LA, of downtown LA, and law enforcement is trying to reposition.
I hit the
it.
thumbs
We've
up.
got an LAPD helicopter overhead that is trying to deal with it as well. And eventually, you know, as we've seen night after night after night, whether or not, you know, it happens right away or it takes some time, eventually protesters make just the wrong move. They're able to get kettled by law enforcement, or what law enforcement has also been doing, and I've been listening to them talk on the radio, is every time you push the group, they start to splinter, right? And the groups get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then eventually they either dissipate or they're small enough to just kind of deal with them as they are. But so far, I mean, yes, we have had people that are non-compliant with what they are supposed to be doing, but we've not seen, this is the Walt Disney Concert Hall you're looking at on the left right there.
I need for you to double tap your phone screen.
You know, we've seen tagging.
Very different from yesterday,
Yeah,
right?
but nothing's on fire tonight. You know, the group is smaller tonight, so.
Double tap your phone screen.
Based on what you just said too, Mike, if
I
you
hit
had
the
plans
thumbs
tomorrow to
up.
go to the Broad or the Japanese American Museum, the Walt Disney Concert Hall, Susie, or the Museum of Contemporary Art, may be a good idea to change plans, because still this area is going to be very busy with protesters tomorrow.
Absolutely. The activity obviously expected to continue for days to come here, and the LAPD definitely ready for that. And, you know, we were talking about this area, Mike, you know, the 1 square mile that is under this curfew tonight in downtown LA, the entire downtown LA area under a curfew tonight. But really, you know, I think a lot
sorry, Suze, really quick, this is the injured officer. So they just pulled him out of the back of that patrol car. You see him kind of, you know, putting his weight on his two officers around him. So maybe a leg injury or something that is preventing him from, you know, from fully walking on his own. But you've got some unmarked units here that are probably just going to load him up. I mean, County General's not that far, so they'll probably run him over to the hospital. But he looks like he's conscious and alert, just, you know, limping or not able to walk on his own
Could
power.
have twisted an ankle or something, just walking around with his comrades there.
Well, and I want to point out that when these platoons move into different positions, they always run. Right, so even if there's a need to run or not, that's just how they deploy. They run, and so it's very easy to trip over something or lose your footing or something.
Pothole,
yeah,
all sorts.
these officers have been here, tirelessly trying to work to keep the peace in downtown LA. And as soon as this curfew went up, the LAPD showed up in downtown LA by the masses. I mean, we saw so many patrol cars out there, still out there tonight, making sure that these protesters clear the area. Just after that order went out at 8 o'clock, the curfew is in effect, again, from 8 o'clock tonight until 6 o'clock in the morning. And as soon as that happened, we saw the LAPD come in with their lights and sirens at times, trying to clear people out. But as we've been talking about, there are protesters still who have decided to remain in downtown LA, defying these curfew orders. And what you're watching here, we believe, is an officer who was injured in all of this. We don't know how and to what extent, but we do believe he is okay, because we saw him standing not too long ago, as Mike mentioned, putting his weight on 2 other officers as he was being loaded into the back of this SUV and presumably being taken to the hospital right now.
Yeah, but it's clear to say most of the protesters we saw earlier today have gone home. It's only a small group that still remain there in downtown Los Angeles, defined as 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew.
Right, and that was at First and Grand where that officer was taken from. It looks like, this may be a fire station here that they're pulling up to. So they may just be, going to get checked out at the fire station and, kind of have those medics just take a look at them. And if he needs to go to the hospital, he will. But, it's probably easier for them to come to the fire station than it is for the fire department to try to get out in that mess and deal with all of that.
Let us know if you hear anything, Mike.
Yeah, we'll do.
All right, thanks.
Protests against these ICE raids continue also today in Orange County. Another round of clashes in Santa Ana. A flashpoint to the immigration protests, of course, the National Guard.
KCAL's Nicole Comstock live for us in Santa Ana. What does it look like out there for us, Nicole?
Well, for the most part, you guys, it's been a much more quiet and calm day here in Santa Ana. But now that it's nighttime out here, we do have quite a big gathering of people here at Bristol and McFadden. You can see that they're kind of just standing in the center of the street there. They have taken over parts of the parking lot for the gas station here, too, and the stores in this surrounding area. And, mostly what we see is just people gathered with flags out here with signs. Some fireworks, of course, you can hear those signs just expressing their frustrations with President Trump and his ICE raids. People are driving by honking out here. Again, we are hearing some of those mortar-style fireworks going off and then some of the firecrackers as well. But what we are not seeing at this location right now is we're not seeing police on the grounds. We were actually at the federal building about an hour ago, and we also didn't see many National Guard members there anymore either, so we're not certain if they moved to another location in Santa Ana, most of them, or if, those National Guard members maybe went to another location. But for now, you can see these protesters kind of marching up the street here, and we're going to show you a bit of the scene that played out across the city today. Take a look. Quarreling between protesters in Santa Ana briefly hit a boiling point Tuesday, with people in the crowd screaming and shoving each other, at odds about the presence of National Guard members. Some say they're just here doing their jobs.
They cannot do anything. I fought for the freedom of speech.
It was a far cry from the chaos that unfolded here Monday night, when a few people in the crowd threw powerful firecrackers and mortar-style fireworks directly at local police in the street. Police responded by launching tear gas and pepper spray rounds their way, slowly dispersing the crowd over several hours. The initial intention to protest federal immigration raids happening locally, overshadowed by those who came to cause trouble.
I just ask you, don't take the bait. They are trying to provoke us into making sure they paint us as being the villains, not the victims. We know we're here for our parents. We know we're here for working families and working people that aren't criminals.
Orange County leaders held a news conference to let the local immigrant community know they're supported and to condemn a militarized response to protests.
We're capable and we have the ability and the resources to be able to provide whatever necessary protection we have for our community.
The police chief who denounced the vandalism and violence last night said he would rather have his own police force de-escalating tensions in the community stemming from the raids. As cleanup crews work to repair the damage left behind, the National Guard continues to protect the federal building into the night, and police once again line up in riot gear for what could be another long night in the street. So it is looking like we might have another long night in the street out here. For the most part, what we're seeing in the crowd right now is a lot of really young people out here, again, just holding up their flags, driving by with flags hanging out of the windows of their cars. They just want people to honk for them. For the most part, and just show the community's support for the immigrant families here, many of whom just say they're really terrified that they'll have their families ripped apart. What we haven't seen tonight is any vandalism so far. You know, last night we were seeing a lot of graffiti on buildings and small businesses, maybe some broken out windows in the city at a different protest, but we haven't seen any of that tonight. So it's
Good night, y'all. Good night.
out here and listening to the
Yeah,
words
good
of city
night.
leaders today of